You ever have a process at work that just feels, well, sick? You know the one. It's slow, it's unpredictable, and you have no idea where to even begin fixing it? Well, today, we're going to play doctor. We're going to learn how to properly diagnose that broken process and turn that vague frustration into a clear, solvable problem. So, you've got a system that's just not working. When a process is sick, your first instinct might be to just start throwing random solutions at it, right? Hoping something sticks. But honestly, that's like a doctor prescribing medicine without even asking about your symptoms. The first and most critical step is to actually figure out what's wrong.
And to see how this works in the real world, we're going to follow a case study, a university that was trying to fix some major delays in its financial reconciliation process. So, let's put this process on our operating table and see what we can find.
Every good diagnosis starts with a consultation. And for us, this is the define phase. Before we can even think about a cure, we have to understand the problem from every single angle.
So, the very first thing you do, you've got to get a bird's eye view. Before we zoom in on the specific pain point, we need to map the entire process from the very beginning to the very end. We have to see how all the pieces are supposed to connect. A really simple but super powerful tool for this is something called a SIPOC map. It forces you to identify the suppliers, the inputs, the process itself, the outputs, and the customers. For our university, this little exercise immediately makes the whole chain crystal clear. It starts with students and banks providing transaction data, which goes through some internal steps and ends with confirmed payments for both the students and the accounts office. Just like that, in one simple chart, we've untangled the entire flow.
You know, what that SIPOC map also does is shine a big spotlight on the people involved, the stakeholders. Because processes aren't just flowcharts and boxes. They're run by and for people. In our case, you've got students waiting for confirmation, an accounts office buried in work, and banks trying to facilitate it all. Understanding each of their roles is absolutely critical.
So all this work in the define phase, it all leads to one thing, a clear, concise problem statement. We've gone from a vague complaint like, things are so slow, to a focused, diagnosable issue. There are delays in financial reconciliation. Now we have a specific target to aim for.
All right, we have our diagnosis. Now it's time to check the patient's vitals. This brings us to the measure phase. We've defined the problem, but now we need to quantify it. We need to understand its true scale with cold, hard data.
Which, of course, leads to the big question. How sick is this process really? Are we talking about a common cold, or is this a critical condition that needs immediate surgery? At this stage, gut feelings and stories just aren't enough. We need data.
So the next step is simple, but it is absolutely essential. We have to start collecting objective evidence. The whole goal here is to replace our assumptions with facts and to really see what's happening inside the process.
For our university case, the most important vital sign is transaction time. Simple, right? It's just the total time from the moment a student pays Poly to the moment their payment is fully reconciled and confirmed. This becomes our core metric, the main thing we're measuring to check the health of the process.
So, after sampling a bunch of transactions, we get our first piece of data. The average reconciliation time is 48 hours. Okay, that's our baseline. It's like the patient's average temperature. But is that the whole story? Oh, not even close.
Because we need to look at two key vitals, not just one. The first is the mean, which is just the average. That's our 48 hours. It tells us what typically happens. But the second, and you could argue it's even more important, is the variance. This measures the unpredictability, how wild the swings are from one transaction to the next.
And this is exactly why variance is so critical. I mean, think about it. An average of 48 hours is completely useless if the delay is sometimes 2 hours and sometimes 200 hours. A predictable 48-hour process is one you can plan around, but an unpredictable one that swings wildly between 2 and 200, that's just chaos. Variance is the number that tells you exactly how much chaos you're dealing with.
So, let's step back for a second and see what we've done. Through these first two phases, we have systematically taken a frustrating, invisible problem and made it totally visible and concrete. We've moved from a vague feeling of, this is broken, to a sharp, data-backed diagnosis.
And the diagnostic method itself is simple, and it's repeatable. Step 1, define. You map the process and you nail down a clear problem statement. Step 2, measure. You collect real data and you focus not just on the average, but critically on the variance to understand how predictable or how chaotic your process really is.
And this brings us to the core takeaway, which applies to so much more than just this one case study. In business, in fitness, in your personal finances, the rule is always the same. What gets measured gets managed. You simply cannot fix what you cannot first see and quantify.
So that's the challenge I'm going to leave you with. As you go about your week, think about it. What frustrating process in your own life, at work, at home, anywhere, could you start diagnosing today? Thanks for tuning in.